First thing to say is good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kate Williams. I'm on the faculty at the University of Illinois, and I have been serving as conference chair for now 7 years of eChicago, along with my partner and co-chair Abdullah Kalamat, who is looking for a chair in the back. Sometimes chairs get phone calls. We have had a really wonderful journey with eChicago so far, and I just want to touch on what that path has looked like. We started in 2007, and for 3 years we were located at Dominican, and the keynotes during that time period were given by Doug Schuler, who was the founder of Seattle Community Network. Second year it was Karen Danzig-Lyons, who a lot of people know as the longtime deputy commissioner at Chicago Public Library, and Shireen Mitchell, who was head of the national organization Community Technology Centers Network, CTCNet. The third year, we heard from Steve Jones, who's here at UIC, a media scholar, and from Matthew Zook, who is a cyber geographer, something very important for communities in this age. And those three, like I said, were at Dominican and River Forest, and then we moved into the city and started holding eChicago here. We heard in that year 2010 from Hardy Bott, who was the CIO for the city of Chicago, and from Eric Garr, who was the broadband czar of the FCC in that moment where the broadband funding was rolling out of Washington. Then we heard from Greg Wass and from Matt Guilford in 2011 from the city and the county. And we heard from three musicians, Art Burton from the AACM, Capital D from All Natural, and Paul Maloney, who had started the internet radio company here in Chicago, AccuRadio. And then last year, we heard from Joyce Latham, who's a professor at Milwaukee, who was speaking about a quintessential moment in the history of Chicago Public Library, the Memorial Day Massacre and the ensuing experimentation at the South Chicago branch. And we also heard from Phil Newstrom, who's from Local Wiki, who is here this year, as we've expanded our focus on this important development, Local Wiki. All along this path, we had somebody that I want to mention along with us, helping to steer it. He's not here this year because of family obligations, but that's Charles Benton, who's a longtime library and community activist and thinker. And we had plenty. We had a dazzling diversity of speakers and other participants such as you. And I want to call the name of one new participant this year, like many others, a student at KISLIS, because it's her birthday, and her name is Stephanie. And I won't tell you her last name because there's several Stephanies here, but if you see a Stephanie here, wish her happy birthday. So here's what we're trying to accomplish this year. And in fact, these are questions that we've dealt with every year, but they evolve, right? Question 1, what is the current state of the ever-morphing digital divide in Chicago and to some extent in other places in Illinois and the rest of the world? And very often we're also finding ourselves talking about those other divides that trail along with the digital divide. These are older divides that Chicago is familiar with. Individuals face these divides, the digital divide and so on, but so do organizations and so is the whole city. What are the best practices then of community informatics, i.e. bridging these digital divides? What can we learn from? And then finally, who is here and who can you meet and know and get to know and carry away knowing? The networking that happens at eChicago and the new outcomes that are possible for individuals and for Chicago because of the connections that are made here at eChicago. Now, as an example of these answers to these three questions, I want to present something that has come out of Champaign-Urbana on the heels of the community work on the broadband rollout down there. These are 11 targets of a new digital divide initiative, and I'll just read them out, but you will hear about these things during these 2 days. Computers, connectivity, classes, cyber navigators, cyberspace, cyber power, community help desk, community wiki, campus community collaboration, cyber organizers, and community technology centers. This is how Champaign and Urbana have decided to attack the digital divide in this way. And they all had to start with C. We've paid attention to documenting all of our conferences, and we continue to do so. So there's a video crew working both rooms, mostly graduate students, but also a visiting scholar from Zhejiang University, and also several alumni. In the first 3 years of eChicago, we printed proceedings, and they're available at registration, and they're also online. We have programs for every conference that are part of the archive, and we have video for the most recent 3 years, which we make use of in courses, and we know by the traffic to these video that people use these around the world. Okay, so now I want to invite all of you here, and those of you that are watching us worldwide on the web, because we are streaming this conference, to be full participants today, no matter what table or what chair you're sitting in. Everyone is asked to listen, to take notes, critical notes, and to speak your mind in sessions and between sessions. In other words, please fully join us on this journey to eChicago. Welcome to this conference. Now I'm going to turn it over to a local brother made good to give the welcome from this campus, Joe Hoereth. And we're all really happy to be here at his campus, so please join me in welcoming Joe.
Thank you, Kate. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. I'm the guy in the suit who gets to give the welcome. That's the easy job. I know we usually thank people for all the hard work that goes into pulling off an event like this at the end, but I'm not going to be here at the end, so I just want to say that right off the bat. Thank you to Kate Williams and her team and Abdul for pulling this conference together. It's a great thing, and we're always happy to be a part of it every year. My name is Joe Hoereth. I'm the director of the Institute for Policy and Civic Engagement here at UIC. And on behalf of the University of Illinois at Chicago campus, I'd like to welcome you to eChicago 2013. One of the things that my institute does is promote and support and facilitate public discourse on important policy issues. And so that's why we're always pleased and thrilled to co-sponsor and be a part of eChicago 2013. The conversations that go on here are exactly the kind of conversations that we feel it's important to be a part of. So we're pleased to co-sponsor the very important discourse that happens at this conference. This year's theme of transforming our institutions, mobilizing communities, is really a perfect frame for thinking about how to use technology to help transform our communities. Technology that is equally accessible to all, that helps all residents of our cities be better informed and have a better understanding of policy issues, and technology that draws people in rather than exacerbating or mirroring social divisions or disparities, as Kate alluded to earlier. I just love that this conference tackles those issues head on, and the participants here engage in discussions with folks who are doing work to battle those challenges. The challenges faced by our institutions are formidable, making our economy healthy, healing our governments, the fiscal health of our governments, the need to literally reconnect with the public part of our public institutions, which I think is one of our real challenges of our democracy right now. So all of you are doing the creative and important work to address the issues of the underlying themes of this conference, whether you're studying it, whether you're a community activist, or someone who came here to learn something specific from a panel to take back to your work or your community. It's tremendously valuable to have a space here, both in the physical and the virtual world, to engage in those discussions is important. So I look forward to the informative and lively discussions today, and welcome again.
Can you hear me? Yes. Check the file.
Keep my hand off, that seems to do it right. A nice awkward stance.
see, Michelle and I are very pleased to open this conference with a conversation. We are going to. We're opening this conference with a conversation, which we hope that you will join as soon as she and I finish up. Is mine on? Okay, now it is. Can you hear it now? Hello? You got me too? Hello? All right. So I'm going to ask Michelle some questions because she's the one we really want to learn from. And you've seen her bio, but we're going to learn more and then get into questions surrounding and within Chicago Public Library. So for warm-up, Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at CPL.
Okay, so actually, when I thought I was going to be a librarian, I actually thought I was going to be a children's librarian. When I entered in graduate school, I had a high competency in most of the technology prerequisites that I had when I entered into school. So my advisor suggested that I take a few of the tech courses. And so I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I was the first class that was there when the school became the School of Information Sciences. They dropped the library and added in the Information Systems Department into that school. And so I was able to take some of those classes and loved it. And so I left the children's librarianship behind and decided to focus completely on technology and libraries. So that's kind of how I started out here. My first job was at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. It was a great place to kind of learn and grow. I was allowed to experiment with a lot of different stuff. And the thing that was kind of cool in that job is that I worked both in reference and I taught their college students information and digital literacy skills. And I was also their web manager. So it was kind of an interesting position trying to bridge the gap between the front end of the library and the back end of the library. Because they don't always talk very well together. And so it was really fun to try to bridge that divide that was happening between the two and get both groups to work really closely together. And they did, and they both loved it. After that, I went to Northwestern University where I had a very short stint as a programmer. And then shortly thereafter, my boss decided he no longer actually wanted to be a department head. He really wanted to be a programmer. He always thought he'd be just an intro. And they talked him into staying, and then when I was hired, he was just like, give it to Michelle. I want to go back. And so after 6 months, I became the department head at Northwestern University's Culture Health Sciences Library, and that's what I did for the last 10 years. About 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to move up. I knew I wanted to move beyond being a department head. I've been called by several headhunters who were interested in me applying for associate director positions or whatever the next level would be for academic libraries, and they all wanted me to have a second master's, and I didn't have one. So I knew if I wanted to make that next step, I needed to get a second master's. And so at that point, I'd gotten really interested in appreciative inquiry. Does anybody here know what that is? A couple people here. It's an approach to a way to actually explore new ideas. Instead of thinking about what is going wrong, you actually think about what is your desired state. And then you brainstorm and plan based on what your desired state is and try to figure out how to get there. I really like that approach of not looking at what is it that's not working, but instead looking at where is it that I want to go in the future and then developing your plans accordingly for your department, your team, your project, whatever it was. And so I really wanted to go into a program that really focused on that type of approach. The only one I knew of at that point was Case Western in Cleveland, Ohio. But I couldn't afford to take that step off of the track of not working for another 3 years and going back full-time to graduate school. And when I talked to one of their advisors, they said, actually, we have a program at Northwestern that does something very similar that you might want to take a look at. And so I looked at the program. It's called the Masters of Learning and Organizational Change. And I graduated from that program last June. It was a great program. One of the reasons I really wanted to do that program was because I've been a part of several several projects, period, in academic libraries that just hadn't quite succeeded the way that we thought that they should. The premise was good, the objectives were good, even the plan was good, but for some reason, it never quite met its full potential. And I was trying to figure out why is it that good projects aren't succeeding? And this program really helped me figure out what it was, what were the pitfalls that we were running into, and why some of our projects really weren't going or weren't reaching their full potential. So it was a great program. It was a program that focused on knowledge management in organizations, strategic planning, and organizational change at the individual level. So I've taken all of that, and when this position at the Chicago Public Library came open, I debated whether or not I wanted to make the jump. I'd done academic for 20 years. Not quite 18 maybe, but still, I can't believe I've been around that long. And to make that jump was a little bit scary, but with what I had learned in my program, I knew I wanted to make that next step. And I talked to a lot of my friends who were very familiar with Chicago Public Libraries, because they'd either worked in it or had worked with it with other organizations, and they said that what was happening last year, they thought that I would be thrilled to be joining in on that team if I could get in. So I took the leap and I applied, and I'm so glad I did.
Cool. Thank you. All right, now let's focus out in the break beyond. Tell us a little bit about the technological advances in libraries that you see elsewhere.
Okay, so when I look at another library, both either their physical space or their virtual space, what I hope doesn't stand out to me is actually the technology, but actually the user experience. If the technology really stands out to me, I'm like, okay, they were probably really enamored with the toy, which as a techie, my God, how can you not get enamored with the toy? But what we're supposed to be doing with that toy is actually thinking about how is that toy or that technology innovation or advancement, how is it actually going to be used and improve the user experience? And so as I go through libraries and I look both in the space and in the online environment, I really look at that user experience and does that technology blend in with the rest? And when you walk into that space, does that space make you go, wow? Because everything seems to blend and work together harmoniously, and one piece itself does not actually stand out on its own. One library that I think has done a wonderful job with this, and I bring it up because I've been in Seattle now 4 times in the last 6 years, the Seattle Public Library. You walk into that space, it's wonderful. They have the technology that they're using is incredible. What they've done with the environmental technologies to make it a LEED library, but you walk in and nothing really stands out to you as like, here, this is what they were trying to do here, and this is what they were trying to do here, and oh, they're testing this out here. You walk in and it's just, you're seamlessly flowing from one area to the other in the library, from one experience to the other. Some are technology related and some aren't, but they all work harmoniously together. You can tell that they're thinking about this together as a plan and not just, this is a project, and this is a project, and this is a project. The other library that I would love to go see, it's brand new, it just opened, I think it was in February or March, is North Carolina State University's, the Hunt Library. They had another library, I always think of that name instead. It's a brand new library, it's either 6 or 7 stories, and the reason why I'm really excited about this library is I know the technology leader on that team. I've known him for a long time. His name is Morris York. We served on the leaderboard together for multiple years, and he was planning this as we were sitting on the board. And when we got to lunch, this is pretty much what we focused our time on. But what he did is he worked collaboratively with faculty, student groups, and with the community to identify what is it that you wish you could be doing in this space if we gave you carte blanche to figure it out, and we'll try to design it for you. Don't worry about the technology, don't worry about the space. Just tell me what it is that you want to accomplish, and I'll actually then try to figure out how to make that idea into a reality. So one of the projects that we worked on was he was working with a faculty member who's doing gaming for students. They're teaching their students how to create online gaming environments. And the way the technologies have been set up within other parts of the campus was they were only to do one-on-one experiences. So you could do an experience where you could game together is what they were playing games, like the World of Warcraft thing, where you each have your own, you're all going into this environment on your own computer, right? But what he really wanted to do, because he thinks this is the way of the future for gaming, is he wanted to create an immersive experience where it was a large screen where multiple people were actually interacting together in one room on one screen. But they didn't have any way to do that. And so Morris, this faculty member, and several, he actually worked with multiple vendors, and they actually were able to make that a reality. And they actually tested this in their own library, which still exists. And they were actually able to actually create this environment where creating this game was possible. And they just launched their first game this way in the winter quarter. So those are just two big examples that kind of came to me of technology when you approach it now. I think it should be agile. I think it should be something that you go in with an idea and it's not perfect. And as you learn and grow and experience this technology, you're willing to adapt to actually meet whatever it is, what you learn as you're going through this process of developing it. That you don't say, this is my idea and this is what it's going to look like 6 months from now, and that's what's going to look like a year from now. Honestly, the way that this should look is like, this is the idea, these are objectives I want to reach. And then what you think of as you go through the planning process is not like, this is what it was going to look like, but this is what I wanted it to be as an experience, and adapt and grow as the project progresses. The other thing that these technology projects that I really like, or libraries that I really like, is they're approaching their technology advances as design projects. They're not, we're not looking at, these are the technical requirements, which you do have to know what the technical requirements are, but they're not letting the technology requirements drive the actual project. They're allowing the design process and what people want to actually accomplish and what it is you want the space to do to drive the process. And I think that's kind of a change in how things are going with technology, especially in public spaces. Before you would say, we're doing it this way because that's what's easiest with the technology. And now what we're saying is the technology should be adapting to what it is that we need to do as users and finding a way to make sure that those two experiences meet somewhere in the middle. The other thing that I hope that people are learning with technology is that it shouldn't be perfect. And libraries themselves really need to get, well, I'll say academics as a whole, and public libraries I'm not so sure about. I'm still figuring that one out. Because the friends I have in public libraries aren't afraid of not having it perfect the first time out there. But we need to try something. If it doesn't work, we revise it. If it still doesn't work, maybe we think about giving it up, or we totally ditch it, we revamp it, and we start over. I think the one reason why some libraries are more afraid of doing this is our resources are small and they're we're stretched to the limit. And we're afraid of failing because we're afraid that someone's going to point at that and say, that didn't go well. Why would I give you a shot the next time? But we need to grow and we need to explore in order to make sure that we continue to stay relevant and that we can grow and meet our user needs. And the only way that's going to do is that we are allowed to embrace failure. As long as that failure was actually something that was a project that was well planned. It's not something that you just went off and said, hey, this is a great idea, I'm going to go do it, and not actually think about what it is that you wanted to accomplish. But if you had a good idea and you tried your best, it was well thought out, it just wasn't accepted the way you thought it was, it's okay. That's what I kind of, what I like about technology.
Thank you. Okay, now you landed at CPL.
Yep.
Wow. Tell us something about, tell us what surprised you as you're still getting to know CPL. What are the surprises?
The surprises. So not only is every day different, but every hour is different. The joke about, well, I lived in Wisconsin and now I live in Chicago. And the joke was always, if you don't like the weather, wait 30 minutes because it'll be different. Well, I mean, honestly, my job is like that. If I'm in a meeting and it's just like, maybe this isn't exactly what I want to be doing right now, or I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'll be doing something completely and utterly different the next 30 minutes. There was one day that I sat in a 2-hour planning session about the new badging initiative that will be going on this summer with partners throughout the city of Chicago. It's called the Summer Learning Challenge. And then the next meeting I went off to was a meeting about our wireless bandwidth issues, right? And then I went to another meeting that was about filtering the city network. And then I went to another meeting where we were talking about how do we really know what we're doing is what we want to accomplish. Are we gathering, is our gut really right? But how do we actually verify what our gut is telling us? And then the next meeting I sat into was how do we upgrade a computer from XP to 7 with our limited resources funds, because we have over 4,000 computers that need to get upgraded. That was a day. So, I mean, just the wide variety of things that I was talking about over an 8.5, 9 hour period was just mind-boggling. And to have to make that switch thankfully I was going up and down floors, so as I'm going up from one floor and then back down to another, I was like, okay, I now need to get mentally prepared for X, and this is what I need to talk about now, and I need to put this other thing away. The other thing that I love about working in Chicago Public Library, and I didn't think I would see this as early as I did, but my impact is tangible on the community. In academics, it was kind of hard to see what your true impact was on the people that you were serving. I was in administration, I was in IT. Those are two very back-end areas where you spend a lot of time with community meetings and planning meetings, and you don't get to spend a lot of time with the public. And even though I don't spend a lot of time with the public here at Chicago, one thing is I always have to walk through all public areas to get wherever it is that I'm going, because I'm in the basement and nobody else is. But when I go in the community and I just say I work at Chicago Public Library, the stories that I hear from the people in the community is just astounding. And when they hear that I work in technology, they always want to tell me a story about how they use something in the library that was technology related to do something that got them in a place that's better than where they were before. And there was one experience that I had that was 2 weeks into my experience. I went to a store to go buy some mascara. I was going to a wedding that I ended up not going to because of the big Boston snowstorm. But I needed some new mascara for I went dressed up for the wedding. And as the woman was trying to find the color that she thought would look best with me, we just started talking, and she asked, where do you work? And I said, Chicago Public Library, the new director of library technology. And she said, oh my God, she's like, I wouldn't have this job if it weren't for the public computers at the Chicago Public Library. I don't have a computer, my only internet access is on my phone. I don't use computers, and I don't need to use computers in this job. But I wouldn't have been able to apply for that position without the help of the Cyber Navigator showing me what it was that I needed to do. And she's like, I didn't get the first round of jobs that I applied for, but the skills that I learned from that Cyber Navigator, I was able to come back in again and use one of your public computers and apply for even more jobs. And I got one of those. And she's like, I love it. And she's like, I couldn't have done this without that library being there. And, just talking about one person and going, oh my God, the decisions I make and the projects that I'm working on, this is why I'm doing it. And that was kind of that really big aha moment. And so now when I sit in those meetings, I'm like, okay, when I say this, and then I have to go and I tell someone where I work, and I go back out in the community, and I'm buying something at the store, or I go to a party, or I go to a reception someplace. What is it that I'm going to hear back if I do X? And so it's really that interesting experience where you get that immediate feedback. The other thing that's been really exciting about Chicago Public Library is the community aspect. The mayor's office and all the city government agencies really try to include Chicago Public Library in whatever it is that they're doing. And being sought out actively by both the mayor's office and other departments and the sister agencies of the city, but also other community groups and organizations. It's just amazing that people are actually actively seeking out us trying to collaborate or work together or learn more. In the academic setting, I found that while that sometimes happened, a lot of it was you knock on the door going, please include me, this is everything I can do for you. And in this community here in Chicago, I find the community knows what we can do for them, and they're excited about it, and they want to work with us. And that was just a totally 180 for me, and it's a switch that I'm so excited to be a part of.
Okay, so you mentioned doing X. Tell us what X is. Tell us about the plans that are being formulated or have been formulated for where the library is going. And this has two parts, technology, but also more generally, because you're a part of the planning process, obviously, in the library.
Right.
So I don't know whether you want to start with technology or the other way around.
I'll start the other way around. I'll start with the non-technology stuff. One of the ideas that I'm currently working on, even though it may or may not have a technology component, but it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So I was thankful that I was able to actually be the one appointed to really work closely on this project, is this thing called innovation labs. Does anybody know what an innovation lab is? A few people here. So this is a big thing in corporate America. Levi Strauss, Nordstrom's, I usually can speak these things right off the top of my head. But there's a lot of people in corporate America do this thing called what they call an innovation lab. And it's a place where you try to get people throughout your organization in disparate jobs and that probably aren't going to work together in any other normal circumstances to come together to work out some type of challenge or to come and create a new service. And so I get to work on this project for the Chicago Public Library. I'm trying to outline it in a way, so what is it that, and each organization does this differently, and it's now moving into not-for-profits and academics. So Harvard has one. There's, there's some major, is it the American Cancer Association, the American Heart Association? I don't know. But several of these organizations now are now also moving into this topic of innovation labs. And so I'm actually working on this project within the library. And the first project that we're launching as part of this initiative, although the staff don't really realize it's actually part of this initiative, they just think we're doing this great thing, is this thing called the Makerspace, which is actually very technology heavy. But that'll be opening up this summer, and that will be, but we're hoping that the space that the Makerspace is in is actually going to be this rotating lab that we can use to explore and experiment on different ideas and then see what we learn from it. And sometimes we'll exploring technology and seeing how people interact with it. Is the way they interact with it the way that we thought they would interact with it? Sometimes we may be putting new technology in there or something else that they can interact with. And we're actually not actually testing that at all. We're actually testing something else about it. So, how does adult one-on-one mentorship work? Or what type of learning, if one thing that libraries promote is not just the love of reading and exploration, but also individual self-learning, right? And so, what is it that we can do to help that process? And while libraries have been doing that through books for years, because that was really the only way you really could learn something new for hundreds of years, or through apprenticeships or things like that, libraries are now moving into other directions because there's other things that are available out there that will help people learn or explore or discover beyond just the book. And so, we're going to be using this space here, and then we're also hoping to use this out in the branches as well, and identify spaces or branches that we can do these types of things. But the Innovation Lab idea is one of those big initiatives that we'll be working on for at least the next couple of years. Another idea that we're moving on, which is also big in industry, is this thing called actionable analytics. I don't know if you know what this is, but libraries usually use like gate counts, computer counts, wireless counts, circulation counts, hold counts to try to figure out what is it that we're actually doing. But that really doesn't tell us what we're doing. So we know what people are using in the library to a small extent, but we don't know what that experience actually means. What is the impact on the user in the library? And what is it that we can use to actually, what can we learn from that to actually improve the user experience in the library, wherever it is that they may be in there. And we have 79 branches, and what somebody wants in one branch is very different than what they want in a different branch. And so what we're starting to explore, and we haven't figured out how to really do this at all, but it's a great idea, and we're actively working on it, is to figure out how do we actually gather information about these experiences so that we have better data to make better decisions in both the main library or throughout the community and all the branches. And so it's a daunting task, but I think it's a wonderful task, and I think it's something that will help us determine whether or not our gut feeling is correct, but also I hope it'll help us find out those little nuggets that we didn't get other places that might help us spark a new idea, or keep something going that we didn't know was actually having a huge impact on the community, because we weren't gathering statistics in any way, shape, or form that would have shown that it actually did. There's two other big projects that we've been doing for years but are getting major facelifts. One is the summer reading program. I've been trying not to say that because that's what it used to be. Every summer we have a major reading program. It's one of the biggest ones in the United States. Actually, I think it is the biggest reading program. It is the biggest reading program. So yes, it is the biggest reading program in the United States. But it's getting a major facelift this year. We're joining in with partners throughout the city of Chicago, and we're going to participate in what is called the Summer Learning Challenge. In the Chicago Public Library, what that means is not only do you have to read books, we're asking children to read 300 hours worth of time as opposed to a certain amount of books. But we're also moving into that experiential part of children's learning as well. So we're actually asking them to receive a badge, which is part of the Summer Learning Challenge. And we're asking them to do different types of activities so that they can learn different things about themselves. So there's things about interactive learning, discovery, and exploration. And one of our major partners for this, even though we're part of the Summer Learning Challenge and all these different organizations, Art Institute, MSI, the Park District, there's 90, I can't name them all, are working on this, we are working hand in hand with Museum of Science and Industry. We're adding, the program this year is called Full Steam Ahead. And we're using, if we're making a slight change to what is called STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. We added the A in there for art as well. And so we're, because we think that's a big part of the process, especially if we're going to be doing something like Innovation Lab, and we're trying to embrace the design process. Art is a major part of that. Science and art coming together to create a user experience, right? I mean, that's why I think design that comes out of like Denmark and Netherlands is so wonderful, because to them it's inbred. It's not one or the other. It's a whole. It's a process. And so we want to start making that available here in the city as well. So the Summer Learning Challenge will be very exciting, and with the STEAM approach. And finally, the other new project is the One Book, One Chicago. That's usually something that we do 1 month a year. We pick one book and we ask everybody in the city to read it. And this year we're expanding it out. It's actually going to be a 14-month. I'm looking at people who look at CPM because I forget. Next year will be a 9-month process, but this year we wanted to start on the same time that we always do. So we're starting it earlier. And if we wanted to also span the academic side of this one, because we're hoping that schools will also adopt this and integrate it into their curriculums. But the One Book, One Chicago thing is a project is now really something where every month we have major programming related to One Book, One Chicago. And it's not just the book that we'll be exploring for the next 9 or 12 months, but we'll actually be exploring the themes related to it and how it relates to the city of Chicago. So this year, the book that we're doing, which I always forget what it's called, is The Warmth of Other Suns. I've been reading it for several weeks and I still, for some reason, cannot keep the name of the book in my head. But the major theme of that book is migrations. So we're exploring migration stories of the city of Chicago through this One Book, One Chicago. And we'll do this again next year with some other book, and the theme will be different, but we hope to do this now on a recurring basis moving forward. The last major project that I'll mention is we have 2 new libraries that are opening up. One will be Albany Park, and while we're still using what they consider that prototype design, we have made changes to that prototype based on what we've been learning over the last several years with the prototype design. So based on that, we're making slight tweaks and changes to it, and then we'll watch and see how those changes are actually adopted and embraced by the community. One of the things we learned is that we don't use as much back storage space for staff, so we've been able to actually redeploy that space for the users, and so that's going to allow us to have a dedicated team space in this library, and most of our libraries actually don't have that, so we're pretty excited about that revision. And then finally, we're going to be, we're about to break ground on the Chinatown Library, and that's actually going to be a completely new design period. The prototype library isn't actually going to fit on the space that's actually out there, so we had to kind of throw it out and start it over. And so we're trying a different design process for actually determining what our needs are, and then how does that actually get actualized into a space. So that'll be a really exciting experience for the next 2 years. See how it turns out.
Wow, interesting. All right, so the reality of Chicago today is that in some ways we really have 2 cities in one. We have the Chicago that's functioning, where people work, where people are learning, things are success. And then we have the Chicago that is underemployment, unemployment, shootings, instability for the people that live there, and insecurity. That's also where the digital divide is the very deepest, typically. Although that's just a generalization, and there's people in all Chicago that are using these digital tools. Without asking you solely about the technology, what are your observations and hopes and predictions for library service and innovation serving that Chicago?
This is a question I struggle with. My hope is that the libraries can make the playing field more level. We have a large population in the city of Chicago that is getting left behind on the wrong side of the digital divide. While people like to, while people like to give the quotes of how many people actually have internet access, the one statistic that they don't usually tell you about is what kind of internet access is that. And while a large number of people in the city of Chicago actually do have internet access, they have it through a phone, which really, I think, hinders some of the opportunities that are available to them. And so I think one of the things that the public library can do on a technology scale for this is, we do make sure, we are the largest provider of public computing in the city of Chicago, free and open, with a large amount of hours, although I wish those hours were even more than what we currently have. And I hope one day that some of those hours will get restored. We are also the biggest provider of wireless access, but that's not enough. And so other things that we've been doing is, and there's a program after this one directly, so I won't speak too much about it, but it's the Cyber Navigator program, where people who have little or no computer skills, or what we now call digital literacy skills, we can do one-on-one sessions and help them through that process so that they can actually become more comfortable with and take advantage and hopefully exploit technologies in a way that people who have access to this in their homes can do, right? There was a press conference last week for the new project called Everyone On, which is trying to get low-cost broadband access into the most underserved communities in the city of Chicago. And so they have this program where the city is partnering with some internet service providers to provide low-cost options for the home, right? But I think one of the things we still need to figure out how to do is, while this is great, I don't know if people have actually, that when you don't have it in your home, do you actually understand the importance of what it can actually do for you if you actually had it there? So I'm hoping that one thing that Chicago Public Libraries can do and other organizations in the city can do over the next couple of years is to demonstrate on a daily basis in the lives of people who don't have this on a regular basis how important this is, not only just to apply for a job or to get your school homework done or to help your child get their homework done, but all the other ways that this can really help to improve your life. And so I'm hoping that is one way that the Chicago Public Library can help. Now, on the non-technology side, I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay. And I love and hate this. We would debate this endlessly in my Master's of Learning Organizational program. And I know that there's some discussion about whether or not it's really a hierarchy. But if you look at each of the needs, that each of the levels that he has, and the levels are, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget it, everybody has physiological needs, they have social needs, they have security needs, they have esteem needs, and they have self-actualization needs, right? So you have all these different parts that make you a whole person, and with each thing that you have, you become a better person, and a person who can become aspirational, right? And so, while some people debate whether or not it's really that stepping approach, I think what it is that the thing that Maslow is saying, and I think a lot of the literature is finally being able to tease and prove out, is that all of these things really are necessary in your life to not only just think about the day-to-day struggle of what we're going through and just to get through it, but also how do you think about not just what you have to do today and tomorrow and the next day, but how do you actually figure out what is it that I really want and how do I get there in the future? Kind of goes back to that when I talked about appreciative inquiry, or I think about Candide, where he said in the play in the book where he says, is this really the best of all possible worlds? And sometimes, I've been in my life where I say, no, this is not the best of all possible worlds, right? How do you get to that, maybe not the best, but a better possible world for me and for my community? And I think the public library is a place that I'm hoping can play a part in each one of those levels. In some communities, we're really important in just providing security and the physiological needs of our community. We're a safe place that they can go to, and they know they can get away from the violence, where they can hang out with their friends in the safe and secure, warm, clean place, right? And I'm hoping when they do that, then it becomes that they realize that there's other things the library can provide for them, and then they can actually then start exploring and slowly realize that there's other options available to them for self-discovery and moving forward. And ways that we've done that, there's one program that I love to, when I have a down day at work or even at home, I'll stop at the New Media Center in the main library and to watch kids from all over the city of Chicago, teenagers, come together and hang out and learn from each other and talk and give each other a hard time and praise each other when they try something new is a wonderful experience. And that's one thing that is made possible because of what the library did in the community. And we're starting now to do that in the branches, and the branches don't have it. And it is a slightly different process in the branches. Instead of the main library, we have the Media Center for teenagers, and the branches were going more for middle school kids. But again, it's that thing of, we're providing them books, we're providing them access to computers, we're providing them a place to hang out, but then we're also giving them ways that they can actually explore other things about themselves. They can explore through music, they can explore through digital art, they can explore through photography, through video, through gaming, through checking out spaces, and through each other. And I'm hoping that's the part that the library can play in no matter what community that we're in. The other thing I find that's really interesting about community is that every branch is really different. I've only worked here for 3 months, so I've officially been to 6 branches, as my official role as the director of library technology. I have popped in many more branches than that, both before and after I started. And I find that even though many of the libraries are under the prototype design or another prototype design in previous time, you walk in and each one has a very different feel. And it's because of the community, and it's because of the people who work in those branches adapting that library in some way, shape, or form to meet the needs of that community. And so, it's really interesting in this community where we are one city, but we are really, a city of a lot of different neighborhoods with a little bit of each of those neighborhoods having different needs. And we make sure that equalizing, we have the same services and resources available to everybody in the community in whatever branch they go to. But we also, I think, are doing, and this is something I think that CPL has really embraced, is that we also make sure that we look at the individual neighborhood that we're in, and that we look at what they're interested in, and then we adapt that branch in different ways, so that library, that branch, feels like it's part of the neighborhood as well as being part of the whole of CPL.
We had thought we would go to one more question, but because of time, I'd really like to open it up to questions from you all. I know you're thinking of them, and in order to capture them and enable people who are with us remotely, if you wouldn't mind posing them from that mic there.
Might just switch it on too.
I'm close to the mic, so I thought I'd just jump up real quick.
Have at it.
It was really interesting, Michelle, for you to allow us to get in your head a little bit here and understand how you think about things. One of the things that is interesting to me, the last point you made about going into the different libraries and each one having a different feel and how folks have adapted them to that particular community, I think that's really important. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the balance in the balance of skills and tools and knowledge needed by the folks who work in those libraries to sort of both know the technology and know the community and know the needs of the people they're working with. And how hard is that to sort of develop, and what are the key elements in that balance?
I am amazed at how adaptive the people in the branches are because, or I should say the staff in the branches, because, they have to do the normal day-to-day things, making sure the computers work and that the books get circulated and they get shelved and, that the place is clean and all that kind of stuff, right? But, so one of the big challenges, we're going to have coming forward, which the staff doesn't know about yet, but I will be making the announcement next week, so surprise. We're about to upgrade all the public computers to Windows 7, right? Which means it's a different I didn't think anybody in Toronto Public Libraries would be all that upset. We're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to fund this, but it has to happen because Windows XP is it's a dying operating system on purpose. They, Microsoft has said, guys, next year we're done. And I don't think this time they're really going to extend it. And so, I'm like, okay, they've been, like when I was doing my listening tours, the first thing that everybody said was, this is what we want. And the reason that it probably didn't happen sooner was because my position as library of technology was not actually filled for 3 years. So there was just a lot of things I think that kind of fell through the cracks, and they kept waiting, like when this role comes in, we will make these types of decisions, right? So, as we try to move forward, I was kind of focusing on like all these great things we want to do moving forward, but there's also these infrastructure things that have to happen. And my biggest fear with some of these is that how do we get the staff up to speed when everything else is going on? So we're going to launch XP, or we're going to launch 7 in the public computers this summer. At the same time that we're launching a brand new summer learning grade challenge, right? And the One Book, One Chicago is different. And so it's just, I'm struggling with how to do this. It was one thing to do it, you learn about it in theory in grad school, and I had to do practicums where I actually went to community organizations and did this and helped them figure that out. But I'm struggling, how do you do this on a large scale of 900 employees and that kind of thing. And I think one way that we try to help keep things going is through some of our community partnerships. One of the questions we didn't get to talk about, but I think when I look at how we work with the community and trying to do things in the libraries, we have three different types of partnerships with people in the community. We have one where we build capacity. So we actually make partnerships with other organizations within the city of Chicago who can come in and bring in skill sets that are needed in that individual community or neighborhood that we ourselves currently don't have and cannot get in a timely enough manner, right? Or we're not sure, we think that this skill set is necessary, we're not positive, we don't want to go down that road. So how do we do that? We partner with someone. So one partnership that we've done that has been, I think, fairly successful, although there's been some growing pains, is with the Digital Youth Network. And they've been wonderful with the new media program of helping bring in a lot of those digital literacy skills for the youth when it comes to photography and graphic design and video and music and that kind of thing. And not by music, I don't mean by playing, but I mean by mixing and remixing and all that kind of thing, making music videos and that kind of thing. And so I think that's one way that we are able to adapt to our community is through the partnering with other organizations that allow us to build a capacity. Another way that we are able to do this is by partnering with in an equal setting with another community member, right? So in one, we're going to do this thing called, it's escaping my mind, but the Road to Citizenship. Several of the branches who have a larger immigrant population, we're partnering with several organizations, both federal, city, and state, to provide toolkits in those neighborhoods that will provide resources that they need in order to pass the test they need to actually become a citizen of the United States. And then some of those branches are actually going the next step further. We're actually going to have classes and programming related to that. So those are some of the ways that we actually, I think, we try to be adaptive to our community. We can't do it all on our own. We try to give the resources and support that are needed in the branches internally within CPL, but sometimes we just can't do it or we can't do it quick enough. So we do it through our community partnerships.
Well, the next person's talking. I work for Microsoft and we'll help you for free.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your comments. I want to ask you a question about technology and jobs.
Yes.
When you walk into the grocery store, you used to interact with a person who was handling the sale. Today you walk in and there's some people and then there's some aisles that you check yourself out. Budgets are a big issue. Many people think machines can replace people. What's your position?
I think that there are things that systems can do that can improve and streamline services. I will say that. I mean, I think look at what computers have done. I mean, look at what, but I think the reason that you do this is that you can actually put people in places where computers can do absolutely no good, or technology as a whole can't. People still need that individual connection. I think that's why people want the neighborhood library. Even if they don't go to it, they want to know that 3 or 4 blocks away that there is a library there that knows them. And maybe not them personally, but them because this is the neighborhood I chose to live in, and I chose this neighborhood because it felt like me and who I am now, right? Or who I have to be now, maybe not who I want to be in the future. But still, I mean, so I think, I don't know if that's really answering your question completely, but while I think that technology can do things, there are things that people have to be involved in. I mean, I think, looking at the U-Media model is it's tech heavy. We have a geek out space that's pretty heavily tech. We have all these other technical resources, and yet the books in there still circulate, and they circulate really heavily in that area. You'll see kids hanging out on the couch in there and talking and sharing and giving each other a hard time and building relationships, and that's, I think, just as important. So in fact, I was actually waiting one day to meet with Sarah to have a tour of the space, and so I was standing outside the room saying, I don't have a key to that area because it's not my area. And there were four patrons walked past me and said, when are you going to do this with the adults? And so, I want a space where I can collaborate and have the technical tools. And he's like, but not like it is in the information commons where each person's in their space, and while you sit next to each other, there's no interaction. In fact, you're pretty much trying to pretend that there isn't a person sitting next to you most of the time, right? Because they're doing something that's very personal to them. But they want a space like the kids have, where they too can have that hope of collaborating with others. But they also need the technology as part of that process. So that's one of those things that I'm trying to figure out, how do we do in the library. But I think in the main library it'll be easier because there's a lot more space. Some of the branches are somewhat smaller. There's some of the branches that I think this would be a great thing to do, but I'm not sure how we'll do it based on the fact that the spaces are limited. So there's not a lot of the other. I hate black and white. There to be everything is a shade of gray, and I think this is one of those areas.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I take your point, but we now have dark factories where nobody is a human being, and we have libraries being built where robotic access to documents that are now stored in big vats, and that's the University of Chicago Library. So we're trying to figure out what is the librarian profession with the emergence of these new tools. And
Okay, so my point, so people, do you want your librarian spending time shelving books? Or do you want your librarian spending time with you doing something in the community? So do you want them putting on programs? Do you want them putting on book talks where you can have some really great conversations about things that are happening that seem to be easier to have it when you're having it related to a movie or a book or watching a play than you can have when you say, we're going to have a topic about X, and this is what we're going to talk about. People don't want to have those conversations about things, but it becomes a safer environment when you have it related to something else. We need to take away some of those things. I mean, the more time our staff spend doing some of those back-end issues where something like technology with the arm can do it so much better and solving the books, and opening up our time so that we can be doing these things that take the experience to the next level, I think we should be doing it. I think the University of Chicago, that Suedo with that book, yeah, that thing. I mean, that wonderful. One's beautiful, but two, to watch it is just it's amazing to see how it works. And I've been to offsite storage places that do similar things offsite. But the thing that it's allowing us to do is it's allowing us to spend time doing what it is, our mental, what the computer can't do. The computer can't have that conversation. They can't help other people have that conversation. Now, sometimes you can, like at the Geek Out space, the kids are probably coming in there first because, well, a portion of them are coming in there first because of the technology, but they're staying because of the relationships that they're building with other people in that location, in that area, and they're taking that relationship and the thing that's great about it is that relationship is being built not just in a school, but across schools, and not just within CPS, but with private schools and homeschoolers, and the kids are being opened up to what it's like in all the other different communities. So they may never ever be in a different community, but because they're all coming and gathering here, they're getting all these different experiences. And that's made possible because we have staff that we can dedicate to make that a safe space and to help create and guide experiences in there that allow these relationships to actually develop.
Could you talk a little bit more about your summer learning program and the details of incorporating the arts into STEM education and the experience of partnering with the museum?
Okay. The summer learning challenge is exciting because one, we have such a major robust component of it. But the other thing that's really interesting about this is that we are actually working now with 90 different community partners. Through a MacArthur Foundation grant, we were able to actually, we're going to do this thing called badging, which it gets talked about in that kind of stuff, but we're actually trying to do this on a citywide initiative of trying to encourage students, or children actually, well they are students, children, to actually do self-discovery and exploration on their own. And so we decided we were going to do this before the citywide initiative was announced. We knew we were still going to keep the reading component, but we also knew we wanted to start moving into that experimental component as well. And so we have, it just went to print yesterday, we have this workbook that the children will use that will help them guide them through the process. So, and what we're trying to do is tie reading and your life experiences to that everything is actually related. That science isn't here, technology isn't here, engineering isn't here, art isn't here, and math isn't here. And I mean, I think about how I grew up and when I went to school, each one of those things was always discrete entities. And I think what our program is trying to do is to try to get students to actually think about these things as a whole, that they're interrelated, that reading can inform engineering, that engineering can inform art, that art can inform technology. And we're hoping through these processes and through this book that they can do that. So they can do this on a kind of an individual level and self-directed work. But then each of the branches is also doing programming related to this, where they can actually do different types of activities that are part of this. So, you know, they can have book talks with the kids, or they'll do things where they, you know, these are books that you might really find interesting, the reader advisory, but also kind of do it in a group setting where the kids can also interact with each other and introduce each other to new things. But we're also having interactive programming, and that's where the MSI comes in, and also for the middle school children and young adult children, we're also partnering with Northwestern University as well on a project called Fuse, where we're trying to get more into the hands-on experimentation, and not just the experimentation part, but then actually get them to think about what it is that they actually did and how it relates to other things. So it's not just the actual activity itself, but how does this fit into a broader learning thing, and then trying to make it so it's actually fun and interesting for them and not cerebral. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
So you're partnering with Museum Science and Industry and Northwestern?
MSI is kind of the big one, and then the Fuse part is really actually for the new media component, and new media itself works with the Hive and the Digital Youth Network, and they're also doing their own matching system. So it's kind of this, we're overlapping that, but their programs are kind of are washing into us, and we're kind of washing into them. So they're, in some ways, they're collaborations, in other ways, we're partnerships, and in other ways, we're just like, hey, you're part of our community, come and use our space and work with our kids to do this.
And it's called Fuse?
Northwestern's program is called Fuse.
Titus? Okay.
In the interest of
Getting to know each other. Would you all mind saying your name before you
Sure. Well, my name is Brooke Bunson from Fremont Public Library. This is kind of a staff-oriented question. You mentioned when you're starting a project, don't worry about the technology. So first question is, how do you find out the need for this project? Who comes up with the idea? Is it patron-based or staff-based? And the second part is, what do you do when your staff has, million-dollar ideas and you need to bring them down to reality? How do you deal with that?
Right. So I'll do the second question first, and then I'll do the first one. And I think the second part will actually kind of inform the first. But I think one of the reasons why we're embracing that innovation lab idea is because a lot of people do have million-dollar ideas. But with limited funds, and I think at this point everybody is really excited about all the different things. I think there are, well, not everybody, but there are still staff who aren't. But there are large numbers of staff who really want to be a part of and try a lot of different things. And if you kind of devote yourself and you put all your eggs in one basket, then you have to let a lot of other things go. And then by the end, when you do those bigger projects, you kind of have to, you do that lesson learn thing and that, that kind of, what is it that, what's that, how do you do that again? The postmortem. When you do that postmortem, you know all the things that you learned that you wish you would have done differently, you would have known better. And I think that's why we're exploring that innovation lab idea, is because you're doing things on a timeline that can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 months. So the impact and the expense related to time, energy, and money is lessened. And so if something doesn't go right or you need to make a major switch, it can happen more agilely. And this is, and I use the word agile on purpose, because this is something that is being embraced a lot by system engineers who are developing software. There's this thing called agile programming. And I think that agile programming, I was a programmer, so this is why I kind of embraced this thought and idea. But the thing that was really cool about going through the agile programming process when I was at my previous work, that's how we develop our programming projects. When we had that one project where we spent a year doing something and found out 3 weeks before we launched that, oh my God, we totally misread people wanted something that did X, but the way that we tried to solve the problem made it worse. And they didn't want it at all. And so then having to postpone this entire launch of a new website because we had to rethink one major component of it. After that, we decided never again is this ever going to happen. And so we started doing that in other projects. And that's why I think the Innovation Lab idea at CPL will be really exciting, because it allows you to explore and you don't get to the end and go, oh my God. Now, how do you get staff and the technology part? That's the interesting one. I guess when I said that technology shouldn't be thought of, I guess I meant it shouldn't be the driver of. I don't want, we're going through a process right now. We're trying to actually solve we have a true technology problem at the Chicago Public Library we're trying to solve. And it's one that actually seems really stupid, but it's really important to people, and we have to move on to something else because our current system is outdated, right? And right now, the technology policy staffing issues are all, like we finally figure out a technology way to solve the problem, and then staffing, it would be horrible. The amount of time and effort the staff would have to put in to support the patron is just not feasible in branches, right? And then you find out a solution that will be in line with and actually save staff time, and then all of a sudden we start costing it out and going, oh my God, there's no way I could ever get a budget like this approved on this project, right? And it wouldn't be cost effective, and it would have to stop us from doing a whole bunch of other things. And as much as we want to throw this project away, we can't. And so we're still just, we're exploring different ideas, and we keep brainstorming, and we keep bringing in other different people in the project process of exploration, hoping that talking to someone out in the branch or somebody that interacts with it but may not think about it as part of being this whole other project might be able to inform us. And so we're trying to not just use the senior team or the techie team, or I won't say the other teams than what the project is, but we're also trying to get out into the branches and pull them in. And then the third part of that, which I know is like 2 parts, but I only answered halfway your first part, was I think one of the things about the Innovation Lab that's kind of cool is that because there'll be so many of those different little things going on, and the time and effort and expenses are going to be huge, the thing that's really appealing about this is that we can pull in a lot of different people at a lot of different times for doing things. And you get a lot of these different projects going on at the same time. And so that's one of the reasons why I think this approach is something that we're really interested in exploring, because people want to, our staff love working in the branches, but they also want to be a part of something different, or helping to launch something new, or to tweak something that exists so that it becomes better. And these, we hope that this innovation lab experience, using these kind of small little projects and incubation projects, will allow us to bring in a lot more people from all different levels of the organization to have a major say in what's going to actually be either deployed, rethought, or given up throughout the libraries. And I hate saying given up, because then people are like, oh my God, you're going to take away something that I love, and maybe we will, but my hope is that this will actually stop us from actually taking the thing away that most people love that we just didn't know actually were going to.
I want to piggyback on Brooke's question, to go back to the question of patron-driven innovations, or services, or programs, or collections. Is there any way that you all have seen to incorporate that? Because there's many more patrons than our staff, and that's what the library is about anyway.
Right. I think, for our community partnerships, that is the community, that is the neighborhood. And so we really do, our partnerships, I think, really enhance and enrich what the Chicago Public Libraries is and what we do as a system, but also at the individual branch level. We also do, a lot of the programming that actually, not a lot, but some of the programming that happens in a lot of the branches is community-based on the individual level. Somebody has a skill, staff don't have it, they want to provide it, and they volunteer their time, their expertise, their knowledge to come in and share that and give a program in their community for that. And that is something that we live by it. We wouldn't, a lot of our programs wouldn't exist if we didn't have these people who are willing to give up their time and their experience and their expertise in the library. At the young level, which is the one I love, is that, like the Summer Learning Challenge, one of the things that children get to a certain age and they now want to participate and help and work with the younger children who are in it. That's like one of the kind of benefits, I guess, of going through. You've been doing this for years. And so some of the teenagers will volunteer now, and they're actually work with the children and listen to them if they want to read out loud, and have somebody actually help them read a book or help them with one of their projects. And so we have teenagers now that are volunteering that will actually help us through that process, and that's what makes that project or that program for us even more rich.
Cool. Thank you for getting eChicago started this year. Thank you all for getting eChicago started this year. I hope you feel warmed up. I want to shout out to the people who were tweeting. They had no questions, they only had comments, so I didn't share them with us. But they will continue. I hope you all will continue and fuel yourself some coffee and snacks, and we'll be back in here and in Oak in about 10 minutes or so. Thanks a lot.